Okay, let's write tests for the functionality that we did in the last video. So we set up our database for our votes, and we also added the votes count on the index page and also on the show page. So I'm going to create two test classes here, one for the show page and one for the index page. Now they're mostly going to be the same, but there are going to be some differences. So let's make those tests. PHP Artisan make test. Let's call it vote show page test. And we'll make one for the index page. Vote index page test. Okay, so let's start with the one on the show page. And as always with Livewire components, let's do the existence test first. So let's go to the vote show page test. Let's go ahead and remove this one. Use refresh database. And let's write our first test. So say show page contains idea show Livewire component. Okay. And I'm just going to paste in some setup here so you don't have to watch me type all of this. So we are creating a user. Let's import that. We only need one category. Let's import this as well. And we are creating a status. And then we are creating an idea based on all of those. Okay. And now we just have to visit the show page. So say get, say route idea show, and we'll pass in that idea. Okay. And we can just assert see the Livewire component, and we named it idea show. So if I did that correctly, this should pass, and it does. And let's do the same for our index page test. So we can basically just copy this and make a few changes. So let's say vote index page test. Let's get rid of this. And we can use refresh database and just paste that in. Change the name to index page. Shows idea index Livewire component. And let's make sure to import all of this stuff. Okay. And idea index, and we don't have to pass anything in. And the name of the component is idea index. So let's see if this works. Forgot a closing bracket here. Okay, let's run this test. And it does pass. Okay, let's write our second test. So back to the show test here. Let's just duplicate this. And let's change the title or the name. So let's say show page, say correctly receives votes count. So if you remember, if you go into our idea controller for the show method, we're just testing that this works correctly. So remember, we're passing this into the actual Livewire component on the show blade. Okay, so let's test this out. So I'm going to make a second user here because I'm going to have both of these users vote on this idea down here. So let's say user B. So instead of this, let's say assert that the view has a variable named votes count. Again, from here. And let's say 2. So right now this should fail because there are no votes. It's going to say something like 2 does not equal 0. Right there. So now let's go ahead and create those votes. So we can use vote factory, or we can just create it without the factory, but I'll stick to using factories here. Create. And like I said, we will just create those 2 votes. So let's make sure to import vote. And the idea ID is our idea here. So idea ID. And the user ID is user ID. So that's one vote. let's duplicate this and let's just change the user. So user B ID. So now this idea should have 2 votes. Same idea here, but it has 2 votes on it. So this should pass. So let's run that again. And it does pass. Cool. Okay. So let's copy this and let's do it for the index page test. Okay. Let's paste it in here. Change the name. Index page correctly receives votes count. Let's make sure to import a vote. And now here, if we go back to our controller, we don't have a votes count directly because we have a collection of ideas. So here's the collection of ideas. So we just want to inspect that collection and make sure it does have an idea with a vote count of 2. So how do we do that? So again, we're passing in the ideas. So instead of votes count, it's ideas. And to inspect the ideas, we can pass in a function as the second parameter here. So function ideas, and then we can inspect it in here. So let's just say return ideas first. So there's only one because that's what we set up here, only this idea here. And that should have a field named votes count, and it should equal 2. So votes count is going to return a string. So if you do triple equals, that's not going to work because it's comparing the string 2 to the integer 2. But if you just do double equals, then this should work. So let's run this. And it doesn't pass. Sorry, I forgot to change this. Ideas index or idea index. And there's no param here. Forgot a closing bracket one more time. And it does pass. So let me show you it not working with triple equals. Should fail. Because like I said, it's comparing an integer to a string. So let's put that back to double equals. Or you can cast it to an integer if you want. Okay. And I'm going to write one more test here. So back to the show page test. Let's duplicate this again. And let's name this one votes count shows correctly on show page livewire component. So we're basically just testing if whatever we pass in here actually gets set in the livewire component and then gets rendered in the view correctly. So we don't need 2 users. And down here, we can just get rid of this. We're going to be testing the actual livewire component. We don't need the actual votes because we're just passing in something to the livewire component. And the votes was tested on the last test. So we can do livewire test idea show class. And if you remember, that takes in some parameters. Takes in the idea and the votes count. So we can set that as an array here. So the idea is the idea that we created. And the votes count can be anything we want. So let's just say 5. Remember, the actual votes count is tested in the last test that we wrote. So that should be fine. We can assert that that variable is set using the assert set method. I don't know why I opened that class. So assert set the votes count is equal to whatever we passed in, so 5. And then if you want, you can actually assert, actually let's just run this test for now, see if it passes. Let's import livewire and let's test this out. It's failing. What did I do wrong? We have to import idea show. Okay, run that again. Okay, it's passing. So like I said, if you want, you can assert that we see. Now obviously 5 is pretty generic. So we can assert that we see some HTML. So let's go to the idea show. And we have these votes count. So there should be 2 of them, one for the desktop view and one for the mobile view. So if you want, you can assert against both of them, or that we see both of them. Only one is visible at a time when you actually view it in a browser, but the HTML exists for both of them. So let's paste that in. And let's change this to 5. Okay, so let's just grab both. The other one is votes count. Let's grab this one. Let's duplicate this. Let's remove this, paste, and 5. So hopefully this works. Let's run our test. And it does work. So again, let's copy this and put it into our index test. So let's grab this. Let's go to our index test. Let's paste it down here. Let's import Livewire. This should be idea index. And the HTML might be different on this page. So let's take a look at that first. Let me just run it to see it fail. Yeah, so it does fail. Let's take a look at our idea index page. Let's take a look at the first one first. So it should be the one on top. So the HTML is different. So let's grab this. Let's put a 5 in here. Let's grab the other one. Same thing, grab a 5 or put a 5 in there. Oops. And let's see if this works now. Run the test. Still failing. I forgot to import idea index, so let's do that. Run the test again. And now it's passing. So let's run this whole file. Let's run the idea show file, or the vote show page test. And everything is passing. And I forgot to change the name on this test. So say index page. Okay, so that looks good. Let's run the entire test suite. And everything is still working. Cool. So as always, let's make a commit. This is episode 18. Episode 18. Let's say votes count test.